Welcome, everybody. My name is Paul Stewart, and this is P.S. Paul Stewart. And this is an interview channel. And I've set this up really to provide some interviews with interesting people, with great stories, great messages, perhaps inspiring stories. And it's my intention to progress and do more interviews as we move forward. And I welcome you to subscribe and join in with the fun. Now, let me tell you a little bit about myself, an introduction. I run a business called Light Body Training, lightbodytraining.com. And my work has been for the last 24 years training people in mind, body, and spirit. I've worked a lot with personal training, and I've worked around the world, including on a cruise ship and in the Middle East, and now I'm currently in Japan. Early in my career, I had a great interest in thoughts and beliefs and the power of the mind and the power of our focus, and also rehabilitation and looking at what are the underlying things that could help people if we iron those out, if we evolved our thinking and practiced advanced practices, what changes can we make? So it's been a real joy to work with those things in my own life and also see clients benefit from exploring those in their own way as well. So this has been my work, and I welcome you here today. So in saying that, I'd also like to give a great welcome to my friend and soul brother, Blair Styra, who's here today to talk about his journey himself a little for us. And we're also going to be given a great gift of his guide and teacher, Tabaash, who will come through Blair and speak with us also after we've had our initial time with Blair. So look forward to that as well. So welcome, Blair.
Hello, Mr. Paul. Nice to see you again.
Thank you very much.
Nice to see the audience again. Hope you're all doing well in this interesting time we're all going through.
Yeah. How is it, just briefly, how is it in New Zealand? You're in New Zealand. How is it there at the moment?
I think things are pretty much almost back to normal, really. And the only difference is there's no international travel. It's been quite interesting over the last month. There's a lot of expat New Zealanders are coming back into the country. And of course, they have to go into quarantine. So the government is commandeering all the hotels so that they're putting all these people who have to stay there for 14 days. And there's a hotel across the road from where I live. And I was noticing the other day all these police around and gates being put up. And I was thinking, well, what's going on? And then got a thing in my mailbox informing me that that hotel had been commandeered. So it's been quite interesting. The little gate area is a sort of a walking area for the inmates. At various times of the day, they're sort of walking around in circles with their masks on and with army protection. So the army is there standing at the door and making sure that they don't do naughty things. Like talk to people.
It's pretty full on, but I suppose New Zealand can say, well, it's working.
Oh, look, absolutely. And we have no social distancing anymore. No one's really wearing masks. You know, all the restaurants and gyms and bars and things are open. I believe we've had no community cases for well over 100 days. And there are new cases, but they're always from people who are coming in from offshore, and then they go straight into quarantine. Yeah. But no community cases at all, which is pretty amazing, actually. So, yeah. And I mean, all credit to, I suppose our government who took the stand in the way that they did, in the fast way that they did, actually. Yeah. But
there's been a reasonable level of cooperation from the population as well, which has been a big factor, I think.
Yeah, I've always thought Kiwis are really good at following rules and just hunkering down and pulling together and just getting on with it. Like, if we have to do this, we have to do this. There's always a few little renegades now and then who want to break the rules, but they get squashed pretty quickly. Yeah, there's a lot of respect for people, and yeah, everyone feels that they're in this together, so they're pulling together, actually, and it's worked well.
Yeah, that's great. Blair, I'd love to talk a little bit about your personal journey. I've got sort of three areas here I'd like you to cover.
Mm-hmm.
So, focusing on your pre-Tabaash time, before you met your guide and teacher that we're going to meet later, Tabaash, what was your experience of life like, and how did you experience your soul? How do you remember that your soul and your true nature being experienced at that time, or those times? And did anything interfere with that sort of natural way of being that perhaps we all have within us?
I'm just laughing because I said if there's any interference, it was probably coming from myself. You know, and resistances and lazinesses and all those human things that you know we're all participating in at times. I don't think there was any interference at all, and I mean, just winding back a little bit, I was always conscious of the soul part of me, even though I didn't know that that's what it was when I was quite young, when I was about 6 years old. And I felt things, and I actually felt presence, but I didn't know what it was. You know, I thought it was ghosts or something like that, and you know, and used to sort of freak out a little bit. But looking back now, I realized that I was just surrounded by source, and one of the things I found particularly was, you know, going out into nature, I always felt the presence even stronger, and you know, could even find magical little places that now I realized were probably I'd stepped into some sort of parallel consciousness. Because if I went back to try to find that same place the next day, I could never find it. And then, you know, as I, you know, grew and developed, I know it's like I felt I was an observer of something that was invisible, but I didn't have the knowledge to understand exactly what it was. But I felt the wisdom within, and therefore it's like my answers were coming from the feelings I had. But I wasn't, you know, at the time developed enough to know how to pursue it. And then, you know, you get on with life. And I mean, I was born in Canada, and we came to New Zealand in the early 70s. And so I just kicked into growing and developing and surviving in New Zealand, from a young guy from Canada coming into New Zealand. And I still had that feeling, but yeah, I was just growing up and evolving and all that sort of stuff. And I wasn't doing any meditation or reading books, or I didn't even know anything like that existed, really. And it was in my 20s that I started to do meditation and read books, and then, you know, certain events in your life act as catalysts for further development and growth. And in my case, it was when my wife Kay got breast cancer. And at the time, it wasn't a very good prognosis, but that itself was a catalyst to open up further investigation and more opportunities. And I must have shifted my consciousness by doing that, because I noticed that I started to attract towards me people that, you know, would give me a book to read on spiritual things, or, you know, things of that nature, you know, those coincidental things that are not coincidence. And yeah, I was having the most extraordinary meditations, and just going out and you know, I was almost hooked on it, to the point where I was sort of walking around with this sort of big spiritual light in my eyes, and people thought I was on some sort of major drug or something. And yeah, it was completely, well, it made complete sense to me, you know, what I was doing. And I mean, I was just living a life, really. I wasn't aiming for any big spiritual outcome. I mean, I was quite happy just to stay involved in feeding my mind, feeding my body, feeding my spirit. And yet, always in the background, and I know a lot of people feel this, they feel I'm here to do something big, or there's some message I have to give, or there's something out there that I have to do, and you really can't pinpoint what it is. And I was just thinking, perhaps if you did know what it is, then you probably resist. and that's why I think these things have to evolve. You know, if someone said, oh, you know, you're going to be a spiritual channel and you're going to speak to thousands of people and da 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 da, this, you see. And, you know, I don't know what I would have said. But yeah, I realize that, you know, when you have a vocation for something, these things really have to evolve.
Yeah.
And because you're growing as you evolve, that's the thing I've noticed, you know, quite a bit. So.
It seems that sometimes if we push it, we pushed back and we closed down that option, but you didn't. And you seem to, from what I understand, you really let it be to a point without probably needing to think about it too much. You just lived it. But then it seems that somehow you met up with Tabaash, and would love to hear a little bit more about how that happened.
Yeah. Well, you know, just what you said before makes me think that, you know, when you know something is right and that you're on a road that makes sense, and the feeling that you have is really, really positive, I don't believe there's a necessity to question it. I think there's a necessity to observe, but I never felt the need to question because, like I said to before, it's like I knew what I felt within me. And I thought, well, you know, if I was on a wrong road, then I wouldn't be feeling so good.
True.
So, and yeah, you know, when you look back in retrospect, you can sort of almost see stages of your development through this. And then you get to this point where obviously it's time for a gear change. So you create a catalyst in your life that opens you up more and therefore attracts towards you other people. Well, in my case, I met with a woman called Jenny Tro, and she channeled the Egyptian goddess Isis. And I attended one of her public meetings. And it was during that meeting, I'm just sitting there in the back seat, you know, minding my own business and listening to this amazing information that was coming through. And all of a sudden, Isis stops in midstream, stares into the audience, and then pointed into the audience and said, "You are a channel." And I didn't think she was pointing at me. I'm sort of looking behind me thinking, oh, that's cool. I wonder who that is, like this. And then she said, no, you. And then I realized she was talking about me. And I sort of like went right down into my seat and blushed shade of a beetroot. Of course, everyone turns and looks at me. And, at the end of the day, you know, what happened was that I attended some of the seminars that she was actually running, which were amazing because, I mean, this is 1980s we're talking about here. And spirituality was still fairly new in regards to, in New Zealand, and that sort of movement, the New Age movement as well. But there's this great group of people, about 40 people, who came to the seminar. And it was just remarkable because they were all like-minded beings. And I'd never been in a room with so many people who believed in the same thing. And we all became fast friends and you know, ended up socializing all the time and became like, as we call it, the soul family. And then, you know, during this process, I was growing more, developing more, maturing more, advancing more in mind, body, and spirit. And then one day Isis just said, oh, you have the spirit who wants to work with you. And his name is, she gave me his full name, which is Tabaash Blair. That's his full name. And he really wants to work with you. And I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, that's cool. Sort of attitude you do when you're 20 and your 20s. And anyway, so I just started doing some meditation, and Tabaash appeared in my mind's eye to begin with. And he couldn't say anything. He was just sort of staring at me. And that happened for quite a long time. And then gradually he started to talk to me in my thoughts. And he wasn't giving me any particular great spiritual truth. He was more like passing time of day more than anything else. And I realize now it's like developing that relationship, developing that connection. And I mean, this is important because, can you imagine just suddenly some entity presenting themselves to you and speaking great truths and stuff like that, and not really getting a sense of knowing you or you knowing them. And I know that happens, but in my case, and I can understand why, because Tabaash is such a personable energy. So he just spent the time hanging out with me, really. And then I was having a meditation one day, and he had been chatting away in my thoughts. And I was in this amazing space. And he just told me to open my eyes. And I resisted because I was in such a really nice place. And I didn't want to break the meditation. And he goes, no, open like this. So I did. And I wasn't even in the room anymore. I'd gone on to another level of consciousness or dimension, whatever. And I remember I was actually sitting on a floor, and it was black and white tiles and windows to the right with all this light shining through. And there's Tabaash standing just right in front of me, looking down at me and sort of laughing and go, why are you sitting on the floor, Blair? Like this. And then he went up. So I stood up, and then he took me just through the door, and we went and sat on the sofa. And he just started talking to me about the deal that we had made as souls and the work that we could do in New Zealand or worldwide. And he just sort of outlaid his thoughts about it. It wasn't like this big plan. It was just, this is what we could do, and this is what's possible, and that sort of thing. And it just felt totally comfortable and right. I didn't even question it, which obviously was because my soul was recognizing what he was saying. And therefore I was recognizing the deal I had made to do this sort of work. And now you got to remember, prior to Tabaash, I was actually channeling. So I was doing some sort of conscious channeling, as we'll put it, where I was just sitting there focusing on bringing thoughts through and stuff of that nature. So it was sort of familiar to me.
And speaking them or writing them?
Yeah, speaking. I was speaking. And, just sitting with my wife and sometimes friends, and just little easy philosophies would come through. And like, I suppose, a form of apprenticeship that my physical, mental, and spiritual was actually going through. And then Tabaash started making his presence felt more and more. And that's when, when he said we could do this. And he just gave me some guidelines to work with in regards to, things he wanted me to do and work on, like fitness stuff and my diet and meditations and things of that nature. Because I was managing a clothing store then, So the channeling thing was a little bit of something you did on a Saturday night, so to speak. And and then it just got more. And I knew it was heading in some sort of big direction. And I don't know, it's funny, isn't it? You sort of think about where do you make the decision that you're going to stop doing what you're doing and start doing something else? And it just sort of rather evolved. And also little things happened that made it easier. So invariably, I left what I was doing and ended up just doing some, I had done some training in sports and therapeutic massage. So I set up a little business for myself doing that. And then started doing a few little sessions, with Tabaash as well. And then that just built up until at some point that's all I was doing. And then Tabaash wanted to do some public meetings. So I did a couple of those, and we had good audiences. And then it just sort of developed just from that point, basically. And I mean, that was over 34 years ago. And it really hasn't stopped since then. So.
No, well, I was thinking, as you mentioned, Tabaash taught you to do a meditation, look at food, look at exercise. That certainly hasn't stopped, has it? The training that you've undergone there.
It's a lifelong thing, Paul. I mean, I'm 60 this year, and and it's a lifelong thing. You never stop. I suppose it's like anyone who's in a profession, like a surgeon, for instance, to use an example. They keep up with the latest techniques and methods and rhythms and things like that.
Yes.
They keep their foot in the door. So I suppose it's no different. And I think also too, and when I look back on the teachings that Tabaash gave 30 years ago, are so different from what he gives now, because as a collective, we've evolved. The world has changed. People are more spiritually aware and understanding. I mean, 30 years ago, people were still digging, and now people are it's like the tree is grown and the fruit is ripened, and now they're starting to harvest.
Yes, I suppose for all of us in the world that are living it, and I mean all of humanity in one way or another, it might seem like a long time, but that is a pretty short time in humanity, isn't it?
Oh yeah, totally. And when I look at the acceleration of spirituality worldwide, it is remarkable. But I mean, we have social. I mean, didn't have any social media when I first started. There were barely computers, and there was no internet and that sort of stuff. And so it was all. Well, I remember once we got a copy of Shirley MacLaine's video. It was a film she made called Out on a Limb, which is about her spiritual journey. And we got a copy of the video. So we used to have Out on a Limb evenings, and where people would come over to our place, and it was 4 hours. So we'd watch 2 hours, have dinner, and then watch the other 2 hours, you see. Too, there were videos around of spiritual teachers from the States mainly, like Lazarus and Ramtha and stuff like that. And there were people who were running Ramtha evenings in town, in a hall, and so people were really wanting this sort of stuff. And we used to run upstairs in my home here. We could fit 15 people up there in the living room, and Tabaash would do small evenings up there. And we would do it 4 nights a week.
Yeah.
And and he had a whiteboard on the door, and he would be doing diagrams about consciousness and talking about the creation of humanity and blah blah blah. And so people would be sitting around, and we'd take them through meditations and stuff, and then Kay would serve them supper afterwards, and people loved those things. It was so intimate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people still say, "Oh, I wish we could have those little small intimate groups again." It would be so great.
Are some of those sort of 15, let's say, are some of those people still around?
Yeah, they are actually. But people have gone on to bigger things and all that sort of stuff. But some of them still come to see Tabaash, and again they often say, "Oh, I just remember those days, and we used to be upstairs, and it was just so cool." And then it just got bigger, because people just wanted more. So that's when we ran, for 12 years, I ran big public meditation teaching evenings every month. And the theater that we hired sat 200 people. We always got 200 people. And Tabaash would take the audience, well, he'd do a teaching, and then he'd take the audience through a guided meditation. And he would use music that he allowed me to choose at his bequest. Yeah, it was pretty powerful. They were really powerful evenings, those, and great. And again, people loved connecting. I used that time also as a way of basically introducing other people as well, because one thing I did was that I allowed another light worker to come onto the stage and speak for 5 to 10 minutes about who they were and what they were all about. So it was a good way of people advertising themselves. And I always had a big table where people could advertise their seminars and their services and all that sort of stuff. So it was great. It was a really good community thing.
I think that's going to really inspire our viewers here today with their own creations. So that it's really lovely to hear about this community of like-minded souls coming together in celebration of life, but also evolving.
Yes.
But I am curious, as you've done your work in your channel, you're probably New Zealand's best known channel. I'm sure you are, though there are some wonderful channels in New Zealand. What sort of reactions or responses have you had throughout your career? Have they changed? What are some that stand out as you've ploughed forward on your journey of life?
Just trying to think. I mean, I would say 98% has been positive.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and you're always going to get the skeptics, and I've been very lucky in that sense, where I haven't really attracted that sort of thing to me at all.
Mm-hmm.
And but I mean, everything is a lesson and an opportunity to grow. But yeah, I mean, I've had people who've said to me, it's changed their lives, for the better. Some people have said it saved their lives. Quite a few people say that. I had one guy who came to me, and he was not in a good marriage, and his wife came to see Tabaash. And, Tabaash is pretty blunt, and so he just laid the cards on the table, and said to the woman, look, you guys, you got to part. You're at each other all the time. And anyway, I don't know what else he said, but anyway, I met up with this guy once in town, and he goes, oh, he says, I don't know whether to punch you or hug you. I said, well, I don't really want to be punched. He said, well, thank you. It was the catalyst we needed. Just move on. And that's what I like about Tabaash. He's quite blunt. He's very honest in the way he deals with things. And I mean, obviously, if he sees that the situation is irrevocable, then he'll just tell them. And obviously, if there's an opportunity for people to evolve together again, then he'll advise them differently. But if he truly sees that there's a situation that they come to the end of the road, well, then he'll say so.
Yeah.
I mean, invariably, at the end of the day, people still make their own decision about what they want to do. But I've been lucky. I've had some amazing, response, actually.
Yeah. I guess it's greatly helped by the fact that you feel secure in what you're doing. You feel right, the rightness of it, in the sense of the naturalness and the integrity and so on. That sort of feeling doesn't seem to attract the opposite, does it? It just doesn't seem to work like that.
What I find interesting, and I remember I was at a social function once, which was a mixture of all sorts of corporate people, etc. And some guy came up to me and said, oh, I hear you're a spiritual channel, something like that. And he said it like saying a dirty word or something. And I went, oh, yeah. And he goes, oh, I don't believe in all that bleep, and da-da-da-da-da. And he sort of going on and on and on, And anyway, so he sort of ran out of steam. And I said, oh, that's okay. I said, it's just what you believe. I said, I know who I am and I know what I'm doing. And I said, but can I ask you a question? And he goes, oh, what's that? Sort of like. And I said, well, I don't mind you giving me an opinion, but why do you have to be so angry about it? You don't even know me, and yet here you are being angry about something you don't even know. He just didn't know what to do. He just sort of looked at me and then walked away. And I find that interesting, when people, they get confrontational, for some reason, was about this sort of stuff. And, I think it's great that people don't believe in things, but why do they have to be angry about it?
Mm.
And I suppose it's somehow making them feel better or something like that. But yeah, I think that's an interesting point there. I think human nature perhaps tends to want to be confrontational about things they don't understand or believe or whatever, as opposed to just give an opinion. Someone say, hey, look, I hear a spiritual channel. Hey, it's not my thing, but, obviously you do well at it, da-da-da-da-da, as opposed to, being angry about it and confrontational about it. So, but that says a lot about human responses.
Yeah, interesting one. I think it's very poignant at this time as well, isn't it? So, yeah. The ability to observe without needing to identify, or perhaps without needing to take such a strong stance in one position or another.
Well, I think people can be authoritative, but I think humans are tired of being angry and tired of being confrontational, and they just want things to be evened out, and find that sense of peace and harmony that we all really want within ourselves. And obviously people find that in their own way. But, you know, I always think, excuse me, you know, some of those odd statements like die in the name of God and stuff like that, you know, or fight for peace. That's a good one. We will fight for freedom.
Well, it's really funny because you might be reading over my shoulder, because I've mentioned that in my notes with Tabaash today about the weaponization of God sometimes. You know, it's like even people with quite spiritual beliefs will use it like a weapon in the sense of, well, we believe, and you know, we're the believers. Well, everyone believes, but just believe different things.
In God we trust, and then we'll blow 500,000 people up.
Yeah, yeah, yes. I like what Neil Donald Walsh said about you know, people, that what people believe. I'd love to hear your words about this. What people believe about God is how they live. They live out their belief in God.
Yeah, well, it's an individual thing, isn't it? And, you know, we think about what Tabaash teaches, that we are all God. So they're basically living of themselves. And so therefore, they're living a part of themselves, not all of themselves. I know Tabaash was going to talk about this today, actually. But, you know, this whole journey that we're on at the moment, it's very much about being more of ourselves, not finding more. I think we found, you know, I do. And it's very much about, well, now let's be it, let's live it. And it becomes, from my experience, just a daily journey. You know, one of the things I always ask when I wake up in the morning, and I ask it of my higher self, is, you know, how can I be God more today? I will always get an answer, and it will always be quite simple. It's not, you know, read, you know, a whole lot of books, or prostrate yourself to whatever, you know, for 7 hours. It's always going to be simple, and it's like a little guideline for yourself that you know how to follow through. And if you follow it through, then it always works. And by the end of the day, I can usually go, oh yeah, I can see how I was God more. Okay, sometimes I get a bit distracted, you know, and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot that. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah, that's okay, isn't it?
yeah, as long as you plug back in or whatever. And I think that's the other thing. It's like not to berate yourself if you sort of lose the plot through the day, or, you know, get a bit sidetracked or whatever, and think that you've done something wrong, because, you know, it's not, you know, it's just more of, okay, yeah, I see what I did. I'll do it better. You know, that's a better attitude to have. But, you know, humans can be so brutal to themselves, you know, feeling that they have let themselves down because they, you know, didn't have time to have a meditation, or, you know, think a nice thought or whatever like that. And, you know, there's always the next moment, you know, to do it better. And yeah, and I think just sticking with that for a moment, I think it is also, it's natural to have our human emotions. And I've actually been writing about this in my third book. And I was just talking about when people embrace their spirituality, that suddenly they feel they have to suppress their human emotions, that they can never be angry again, or never feel frustrated again, or all those sorts of things. And it's like people are about to explode because, you know, they've got all these pent up emotions within them. And you know, you can't go around with this sort of spiritual smile on your face all the time and float around and all that sort of stuff. You know, you will get angry and feel pissed off with the world and resentful and resistance and all that sort of stuff, because it's just part of the human experience. But then gradually, as you involve yourself more with the higher part of you, then you just find that you don't have those responses, and you don't have those responses because you don't attract that situation to you. You know, and I mean, just an example. So I was driving down the road the other day, and I was just about to turn to the left, and this guy had run a red light, and he went through like that, you see. So, of course, I said a few choice words. So, made hand movements as well.
Where are you going?
And then I looked up and I said, "Oh, I was God doing that. I was God saying that." but it was interesting because the guy who ran the light, his karma got the better of him because there was a traffic cop just on the side there, and he hadn't noticed it. So I sort of drove by and sort of gracefully smiled at him. Yeah. So anyway.
You just adjusted. You did what you did, and you made peace with it.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. I mean, you got these natural things that you just come out with sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think when people feel that they've got to be all kind and nice and smiley and all that sort of stuff all the time. But look, you have bad days.
Yeah, it's a lot to carry.
Yeah, I have days when I call them I hate people days, where I just don't want to be around anyone, and whether I'm sensitive on that day or just having a bit of a grump or something like that, And I mean, I'm mostly a positive person, and was that the other? Oh, it was that day when I had a grumpy day. Anyway, I went to visit Kay in the care home, and one of the staff members who I know quite well, he goes, "Oh, you look in a bad mood, like this." Anyway, yeah, you got to. And he goes, "That's really unlike you." so this is this thing. People have this idea, I suppose, about what spiritual people are supposed to be like all the time. But so what I'm saying is don't stop being yourself. Just organize yourself better.
Well, I love how when you did tell us what you uttered, then the Wi-Fi went a bit fuddy and blocked it out. So that just shows it's quite rare for you. That was wonderful.
That's my team. That's my editing team out there.
Yeah. Blair, what would you like to tell people about Tabaash before we talk to Tabaash directly? A little bit about the process that people are going to see for those first timers. Although I know that you've got a lot of people who'll be really looking forward to. They're not first timers, but for those that are.
Well, I mean, being a channel is rather like, I suppose, being a human radio. So I just shift away from my frequency as Blair, and then the station becomes available, the frequency becomes available. So Tabaash's energy is just honing onto the signal, and that's how he's able to speak through me in the way that he does. The process I go through, when I first started working with Tabaash, I was given a phrase to say in my thoughts. I won't tell people what that is, but it is a phrase which is uniquely for me, and it allows my consciousness to just step aside. So when I think that, I just step aside, and I move into spirit. So I move on to another level of consciousness, or I'll say a level of awareness is a good way of putting it. And when I'm out there, that's as real to me as being in this room right now is. And then Tabaash just utilizes the body. And I mean, in basic terms, it's rather like my body's a vehicle, a car. And so Tabaash has just said, "Oh, can I borrow the car for an hour?" "Oh yeah, here's keys." So I just go, and he does the driving. So.
And do you like today, for example, Tabaash will talk about some things I don't know what, but and I have some questions if it pans out that way. But do you, because this is a fresh interview, so to speak, would you go back and listen for your own learning, or do you feel that are you able to hear or absorb that understanding?
I never listen to anything that I do. Mm-hmm. I've got this weird thing about watching myself channel. I just feel bizarre. It feels odd to me. And it's like, I know that's my body, and I know that that's Tabaash, and I get the whole thing, but it doesn't make me feel uncomfortable, but it's almost like you're invading your own space or something. I don't know. It's just the weirdest feeling. But yeah, whatever Tabaash talks about, they allow me to just absorb that. When I first started doing public work, and at the end of the evening when I'd go to sleep, he would download all the information that he talked about. and in my dream state, but it was driving me batty because it was just keeping me awake. You know, it's, imagine trying to go to sleep and someone's playing a lecture to you. And so in the end, I said, look, you know, is there another way you can do this? Because, you know, lack of sleep is, you know, it's not good for me. So in the end, he just, I don't know what he did. He made a few little adjustments, and then it's just sort of there. So.
Well, it just shows the power of asking, doesn't it? Being honest with your needs as well during the whole experience.
That's just something that I've realized, is that when you have to say something or ask, you know, because Spirit's not there saying, well, we'll do this, you know, because they can't come into our zone unless we've invited them in.
Mm.
You know, and whether it's through our meditations or consciously or whatever like that. And because there have been times when I've said, well, why didn't you say something? And he says, oh, you didn't ask me, you know. and so I'm like, okay, that's the literal thing. They're quite literal.
It's interesting that thought popped into my mind with a client today too. It's a really good reminder for people to hear, I think. Just still be the driver, even when you've got these wonderful beings helping you.
Yeah, I was driving somewhere and I needed a car park. It was raining. And I put the thought, I could have a car park, please. So I got a car park, but it was like 2 blocks away from where I was wanting to be. So I said, I thought you were going to give me a car park. And he said, well, if you wanted one outside the building, why didn't you ask for one? You know, so rather than just a car park. So I got it. So.
Yeah, that's a really good teaching right there, I think.
Yeah.
There,
Should I bring Tabaash through?
Yeah, when you come back at the end, I understand sometimes you have a little bit of adjustment, so I don't want to ask you a lot of questions at that time, if that's all right. We'll just come back and say what we say. Keep it nice and light so you can relax into your zone again.
All right. So for the audience, I just close my eyes now and I just do my little head thing. It won't take long to bring Tabaash through. I'll just shake a little bit. That's just energy going through my body. Then Tabaash comes through and body will go a bit rigid, but that relaxes after a while. And then we'll greet you and have some water here and start talking. So I'll see you when I come back.
Thank you, Blair.
Hello, Paul-san.
Hello, Tabaash, and a warm welcome and a big welcome from our viewers too on their behalf. Thank you for being here.
Greetings to you all. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about tonight was about how you were created. And, you know, if you think about the Christian Bible, when it said, God created man in its own image. And never in that Bible does it say the image was physical. So when it's spoken of, it actually means the consciousness of God, the power of God. You were created as God, not a part of God, but literally as God. And that is your soul. And so therefore your soul possesses absolutely the total omnipotent power of the God force. And therefore everything that is ever needed by you is always there. So you are literally created to be successful. You are literally created to get it right. You are created to be healthy. You are created to be in total harmony. You're created to be in total alignment with each other. You're created to have exactly the life that you desire to have. And so when humans create all of this, I have to find, then, you know, like I've said to people, don't make life your destination. Make life your experiences. So when you allow yourself to focus on your experiences, then you're able to go to the higher part of you, which has all the answers, which will show you the best way to have those experiences, the best way to activate all the information that's necessary attitudes, actions, whatever. And therefore, one never needs to find oneself or hope for the best or all that sort of thing. Instead, it's like, okay, I'm finding myself in this situation. I'll just stand still. And therefore, I'll allow myself in my stillness to activate whatever is necessary for me. And the thing is too, and this is really, really important what I'm about to say, it's always really simple. You know, God is not a complicated force of consciousness. It's really basic and it's really simple. And when people stand still and they're allowing themselves to be involved in their silences, then you're able to observe within. And that's where the simplicity of life's force presents itself to you. And often, as many viewers will attest to this, that when they've done that, suddenly everything made sense, or clarity was presented to them, or they had an answer, because they went back to what humans call the basics. And when you go into the basic simplicity of what life force represents, it actually goes beyond thinking. It even goes beyond human emotions. So you go so deep into that well of knowledge that everyone is, and then go forth from that exactly what's necessary. And then once you've ascertained what that is, then that's when you look at bringing in the structure of your human thinking, because then you begin to look at the strategy that you want to utilize to benefit from that vibration and that energy. And so please, you know it all now. You have it all now. And that's where, when you're involved in any form of self-development, you're really simply remembering. You're not learning. You're remembering. That's why when you read something or something presents itself to you, or you attend something, and you often can say, oh, it's weird, I feel I know this, or this feels familiar to me, or this speaks to my soul. And that's because your soul is recognizing a truth that it already knows. And then once you absorb the energy of that, then you decide the best way that you want to experience it. And if you want to experience it more, well, then obviously you keep investing in that particular experience. And I'm not just meaning spiritual things, I'm talking about life. You know, this is how humans get involved in their careers and their relationships and the things they like doing, their talents, because it seems natural to be involved. So what you're seeking for is literally all things to be natural. So as human nature has discovered through history, when you practice what is unnatural to you, then you either resist or you create some form of conflict, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, whatever. But basically, you have a reaction to a vibration that's not natural. And it's no different, say, from eating a food that disagrees with you. That's an unnatural thing to your system, so your body repels it. So your mind and your body and your spirit will repel anything that does not feel as natural to it. And of course, human nature is very good at trying to fit unnatural into natural. It doesn't work. And they can give themselves the illusion of it for a while. And I think of, you know, when you think about the way the world has been directed through history, you know, really human nature has developed the ability to accept unnatural practices to run the world, to run people. And then, of course, human nature sometimes makes a stand and says, no, enough's enough. So therefore, we must, you know, have a voice here or take a step forward. And you know, just there's a gentleman who passed away just the last couple of days who was an American senator. He was a black man. And he was a contemporary of Martin Luther King. And he was one of the men who went on to those original marches, you know, for black rights. And so I just think of him because he was somebody who was trying to live what was natural to him in a very unnatural way of being treated. And I mean, even now, the civil rights movement is still strong, but I mean, where are the rights of people? And in saying that makes me think the rights of people are within the rights of self. So when you practice the rights of life as an RITES, then you realize that you are involving yourself in what's natural. And so when you do that, well then of course it is a no-brainer, as they say, that you will live a life based on what is natural. And I think humanity more than ever realizes what is unnatural and how much unnatural systems are, how much unnatural politicians are, how unnatural the way that the economy is run and the environment is run. It's all run on unnatural practices, unnatural rights. And so therefore humanity is finding its voice more and more. But the voice has to be from their soul, not from their human nature, because human nature will make them angry. Human nature will make them confronting. But if they do it from their soul, en masse, then there's a bigger voice. And this is what's occurring. And, that very simple adage, united we stand, divided we fall. So humanity is uniting as souls now. And therefore, if you unite as a soul, then you're uniting all these wonderful beings who have all the answers. So if everything is always there, then as humans unite more spiritually, then you're all connecting with the parts of you that know everything. And so it's like this time is sounds a cliche, but it is a turning point in the directorship of consciousness. And when I speak of directorship, I'm talking about the collectivity of all beings who are, you are all the great leader. So in your combined energies, you're all becoming the great leader. And as more and more humans turn the light on in that sense, then everybody is able to be activated more. Because the more that energy becomes prevalent, the more power you have access to. And think about that power. Of course, it's going to ask of you, are you living your life naturally or are you living your life unnaturally? And this is what I believe where you are all at this particular point. You're now looking at moving away from the unnatural vibrations which have created conflict and moving into what's more natural. But that has to be looked upon from a very individual perspective. And again, I know that some people would say, well, how do I move into what's natural, in a collectivity? Go to yourself and look to your way of living, look to your way of thinking, look to your way of feeling, look to your life, and then put that question to yourself. What is natural to me? What's unnatural to me? And you will know. And unnatural will always make you not feel good. Whether it's the people you're with or the place you're living in or whatever. And look, I'm not saying that suddenly you have to leave everybody and move, but it is to step back and look at the bigger picture of who you are. And then just simply put to yourself, right at this particular point in my existence, what is it I can do? What is it I can think? What is it I can feel? How can I practice what is natural to my mind and my body and my spirit? Just for this moment, this hour, this day, this month. So don't put yourself into some demanding situation because it's completely unnecessary, because that puts pressure on you. So the thing is, pressure is not natural. And I know I've said this before, but this young man who once said to me, "Hey, Tabaash, what's the rest of my life going to be like?" And I laughed and laughed and said, "Man, it's enough to know what the rest of your day is going to be, let alone the rest of your life." I said, "Why do you want to put that sort of pressure on yourself?" But people do. Oh, I want to know this and I want to know that and all this sort of stuff. And I said, well, what do you know now? What do you know right now, this day, this moment, this second? What do you know right now? Oh, I'm sitting in a chair. I'm talking through a body. That's what I know right now. You know, and so it's this is the knowledge of the moment. And is that a powerful experience? You know, can I make a few arrangements? You know, so it's always about pay attention to the naturalness of your occurrence, your thought, your feelings, your attitudes. And look, as you practice that, then obviously you don't have to pay such overt attention all the time. But you know, while you're doing that, this is what awareness is all about. You know, by paying attention, you are aware. I'm suddenly aware of, you know, what am I living that's naturally? What am I living that's not naturally? And then in that awareness, you establish a formula. And the formula creates, which I think is a really good energy, called allowing. You know, so when you get into awareness and you are in harmony, then you allow the knowledge, you allow the wisdom, you allow the happiness, you allow the vibrations to attract towards you. You know, all that is good and great and grand. And yet, I think humanity is allowing a little bit in. And then poof, up goes the gates, or the walls, or the barriers, or whatever. I'm not allowed to do that. I haven't understood that enough. I'm not allowed, you know, to walk that particular path because I haven't developed enough. Well, excuse me, but that's crap. And so you don't have to ask permission to be what's natural to you, which is the ultimate vibration of life. So if you can permit yourself to totally accept, hey, everything that I need is me. I don't need to find a thing, but I need to stand still and I need to define right now at this point in my life what feels the most natural thing for me to think or to do. And look, natural is often so simple. And you know, it's like the pressure people put themselves on just in trying to make decisions about just day-to-day stuff. Or what feels natural. Oh, I don't know what to eat tonight for dinner. Or what feels natural. Oh, I don't feel very hungry. Well, then eat light. And so it's this thing about, oh, I got to fill my life up with a routine, or I should do that, or I should do that stuff. It's like, well, what feels natural to you? You know, you have, you know, like Blair was talking before about, you have naturally grumpy days, you have naturally happy days, you have in-between days, you have spiritual days, you have, you know, when you feel very physical, you feel very creative, you know, and it's to enjoy, you know, what you're presenting to yourself. So if you try to play a role that doesn't feel natural to you, then you're gonna know that. You're gonna feel resistance, either from yourself or from other people. And so this is, you know, a time where humanity is got to go back into a place of what's natural, because that's how you build life. You don't build life from what's unnatural. And so you know, my challenge to you all is to find the simplicity of your naturalness and then create from that particular point. Allow the power, the energy of life to descend, to come within you so you can ascend into greater heights of energy. And you know, you're very welcome, you know, doors wide open. So there's nothing barred to anyone, you know, so all the doors are always open in every way possible.
You know, children are great teachers of this, aren't they? You know, they will, if something's unnatural, they'll be like, no. Some children, they'll just go off and they'll go towards nature. You'll see walking past a park, the child gets to the park and they start running. They are just running into that park. Well, what's your observations with children of the world, and what would be your message to a child of the world?
I think my message would first be always just be you, because that's what you are. You know, be the natural being that you are. And as you evolve, listen to yourself. Hear what others are saying, but listen to yourself. And of course, because of the nature of karma on this planet, then one has to make concessions. And therefore, if you come into this planet, say, for instance, as a very light being, full of joy and all that, but then you have parents who are negative and don't have any belief system in regards to spirituality, then that's a karmic challenge for that child to not permit themselves to be too infected by that frequency and that vibration. And you know, it's not that they're in the wrong family. They're just karmically in that position. And so it's about keep evolving, keep being yourself. And when you become old enough to be able to observe and consider things from your perspective, then that's when you make your own plan. But of course, the children that are being born now are highly evolved beings. You know, they come with the lights turned on, basically. It's the best way to put it. So what was your other question?
Well, actually, it sort of raised another one there. With the children, kind of lost it a bit because I had a couple of floating around. But it made me think about the current situation as well now. Now, there's a lot of voice being made against things that are just, let's say, wrong, for lack of a better word, or need to evolve, or things that have been destructive. But there's also a little bit of a trick of not going into victimhood, isn't there?
Yeah, well, that's a difficult question to answer, really, because you just have to still take into consideration the concept of karma, and that whatever people move into, that's a choice that they're making on some level. And I think if you carry wisdom and are a good observer, and you're getting involved in victim consciousness, then you're not really practicing being you. You're still allowing yourself to be influenced against your better judgments, or against your thoughts, or against what you feel. Okay, as a child, then, you know, maybe a child doesn't have that voice at that point. But it's all relative, you know, and that's where, you know, this is where you have to remember that where anyone is exactly where they put themselves, even a child.
Yes.
You know, and that might be a hard thing for people to understand sometimes when you think about some of the adverse situations that children find themselves involved in on this planet, and the levels of abuse on all levels that they sometimes get involved in. Some people could find that very difficult to consider. Well, why would a child make that choice? But then, as I would say, but the child hasn't made the choice. The soul made that choice. And that child won't always be a child. And so it's about, that's why I said it before, what's natural to be a soul. You understand how life works. Remember that you're all souls. Even if you're 3 years old and are an orphan because your parents were blown up in a bomb in Bosnia or something. And so that was still that soul's choice. But the child experienced it. But it's still the soul's choice. The soul will always be the soul, and it will always carry the wisdom and the code of life. And of course, the human will just keep evolving through its experiences and make its own decisions about what it wants to do with that vibration.
Yeah. If someone was watching this, that they might think, you know, they might say to themselves, I've got a huge ego, or they might be aware that they're struggling with kind of ego stuff, or even maybe they haven't acknowledged that and they just happen to hear this. What can one What helps someone like that is sort of open to balance?
When I think about people who have, as you put it, big egos, then they're not comfortable with themselves. So therefore, they have to project their value and their worth in the hope that people will recognize them. So if people are massive in their egos, they don't recognize themselves. And so they have, for whatever reasons, their insecurities around that. So I would say, for people like that, make peace with yourself and realize that it's a phrase that I have used before. Truth needs no publicity. Simple as that. You know, if you know who you are and you know what you're all about, you can just quietly get on and do your thing. You know, I know lots of people who have succeeded enormously in life and done the most amazing things and made lots of money and done lots of adventures, but no one knows they've done it because they're not doing it so everyone else can know. You know, they're just doing it. And they're great philanthropists and, you know, you name it. And yet they're just doing it. So they're just living their lives. And yet, you know, for people to prove themselves to people means that themselves.
It's interesting. Now, if we have, sorry, yes,
I have to go. Yep.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, yes. If you had any message to leadership, we've been talking about that already, personal leadership. But let's say that there were people that were in a position to actually have quite an influence over a lot of different people. What would be your comments to them?
Are you talking about present leaders or future leaders?
Let's cover both. But I was thinking present.
To the present leaders, I would probably say, your day is done. You know, the old draconian methodologies of leadership are long gone, and they're a dying breed. I mean, majority of leadership tend to come from, I'm not saying all, but mostly come from a position of ego. And you know, some are altruistic in their patterns and belief systems, but they become very easily controlled by those who don't like, you know, what they represent, basically. So those sorts of people don't last very long. And so to the new leaders, communicate, talk together, find the collective voice of this planet, and pull together, collaborate better, and work for each other, not against each other. And by doing so, it's not so much you find a solution, but you find ways of relieving the situation and the circumstances and reorganize everything. You know, because that's often what it's all about. We just have to reorganize. We have to redistribute the energy. You know, there's completely enough on this planet for everybody. And it's just really a matter of organizing it better. But then you got those people who are in their ivory towers, are so used to being in control and pulling the strings. But I suppose they don't want to let that go. They don't want to be like the rest of the crowd. But no one can be like the rest of the crowd because the crowd's made up of all this individuality. And so you know, no one is ever lost. And yet, you know, you look at people who, well, I mean, history has showed this, posturing leaders who come and gone, you know, at the end of the day, you're just an election away. Or in the past, a spear away. I mean, the thing is, I mean, you definitely don't want to be a leader in Roman times, that's for sure. You know, I mean, what a way to live. But I mean, even look at some of these leaders, the way they live. They live behind barricaded homes and are completely surrounded by bodyguards all of the time. I mean, is that living? That you have to create? Is that you live in a fortress? You can't just pop down to the shops and get the paper. You know, a simple, joyful thing to do. And imagine living your whole life like that, and end up living in fear too. There's always someone who'll be plotting against you.
Yeah, perhaps a little bit more friendly leadership would make life a little more friendly in return.
Well, you'd think that, but you know, it's all about evolution. So, you know, you'll see coming forth a new breed of leaders, you know, as these beautiful light souls present themselves and reorganize what leadership is on this planet. So, in the meantime, I must go.
Well, thank you so much, Tabaash. It's been a real joy.
Blessings to you all. Blessings to you all. Oh. Hello.
Oh, welcome back, Blair. Yeah, that was wonderful. Thanks so much for being here, giving your time, and you know, I'm pretty sure that people are going to really enjoy that, get a lot out of it.
Oh, well, I hope so. And it's just nice to be able to talk again. So we'll talk again soon.
Thanks so much.
Bye for now.